Our long-standing alliances and the global order under question as the Munich Security Conference gets underway. Around 70 heads of state and government and more than 140 ministers to attend, including the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang. The pair meeting just hours ago on the sidelines of this event, with President Donald Trump due to visit China in April. Mr. Rubio, ahead of his meeting with Mr. Wang, describing the direction of current transatlantic ties as facing, quote, a defining moment in a rapidly changing world. We're joined by Will Denselow, who is covering this event for CNA Live from Munich. Will, the conference opening report is titled Under Destruction, in which it very clearly says the world has entered a period of wrecking ball politics. This is in the conference opening report. What does that say about what we can expect at this Munich Security Conference?
Well, we've had somewhat of a foreshadowing by the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, saying that we're now entering what he describes as a new era of geopolitics. He says that it's now an opportunity to re-examine what exactly that means. So really, that frames exactly what we can expect over the next couple of days here in Munich. And there'll be a number of themes, a number of events looking at particular flashpoints around the world, a number of themes as well, just to see how the reshaping of geopolitics is exactly transforming ahead of us. For example, there is a meeting on tariffs. Of course, this has become a huge issue in global trade since US President Donald Trump took the Oval Office. A number of global conflicts also being discussed, Arctic security and the war in Ukraine. Where exactly does the US allegiances lie, especially when it comes to this relationship with Europe, which has been so under strain over previous months? We'll be expecting to hear from a number of the US's transatlantic partners pledging to do more, to be a more independent Europe. That is something that Washington has long called for, essentially, as the US looks to focus elsewhere in the world. The message we're hearing from the Trump administration is that it's up to European allies to take more control here on their home turf.
Will, taking more control might also mean at this security conference, Europe making a stand that might not always run exactly parallel to the United States.
Absolutely. And we've seen in this national security announcement from the US in recent months, really laying out where they see the European strategy going forward. They've warned of civilizational erasure, even really taking aim at Europe's migration policies, for example. So what we're seeing is growing schisms in this deeply entrenched transatlantic relationship, both when it comes to social policies, when it comes to trade, as well as national security issues. Of course, the huge flashpoint in recent weeks being that of Greenland, the Trump administration threatening even to take control of Greenland. Recently, we've seen European allies trying to make inroads with the US on that particular issue, trying to stake that claim that, yes, they are taking Arctic security seriously. We've seen that play out at NATO again with the meeting of defense ministers earlier this week. So really, that big pledge from European allies that they say they are doing more really to keep the US on board. And aside from the transatlantic relationship, of course, we know that Wang Yi, China's foreign minister, will be here speaking directly after Marco Rubio on Saturday here in Munich. Very interesting to see exactly what Wang Yi has to say about China's role in the global order going forward as well.
Well, thanks. Will Denselow there covering the Munich Security Conference for CNA. Of course, European leaders will remember the speech at last year's Munich Security Conference by US Vice President J.D. Vance. This time, Marco Rubio is taking his place, leading the US delegation. An analyst at the conference looks at what this change in the man leading the US delegation might mean. And when they do meet, as he has met, Mr. Rubio and China's Wang Yi on the sidelines, whether that meeting might have any outcomes.
There's been a lot of worry about how much lecturing and hectoring the United States has done of Europe, and whether that means that they need to stand on their own 2 feet. I would just add, some of that is long overdue and important. So NATO, countries outside of America spending more on their own defense, that's important, and it's long overdue. Doing more in technology, all of that is great. But I think all of us here are hoping that the alliance will hold together, which I think it will. I think you're going to see a softer tone from Secretary of State Rubio, who is coming. There's some parts of the Trump administration talk about Europe having to rejuvenate itself, having to be competitive again. I think some of those criticisms are accurate and important, and I think if said politely, the Europeans would actually agree. And I think Marco Rubio is just the person to say the same thing, but say it with a softer touch. There is a summit coming up between President Xi and President Trump in a couple of months. We understand that the Treasury Secretary Bessent has been made in charge of the economic part leading up to that summit. So my guess would be that there'll be a lot of conversations here if Marco Rubio and Wang get to see each other about what's going to be discussed at that summit. What are the deliverables, as we call them? Is it going to be mostly on trade? Are they going to also discuss security and technology? I think pretty much everything will be on the table. Well, I think China wants to trade with the world, and that is all well and good and very important. It just needs to be done with a level playing field. What we see from the technology side is the Chinese being excellent at AI, especially how quickly they're moving AI through their entire society, how much they're doing on robotics, how fast they're building some of these data centers. So that's creating a lot of worry, I think, both in the US and in Europe.